Hello and welcome back. So as the sun sets beautifully, thank you to the sun, our final session. So our next speaker is Simon Packard, and he is drawing coordinator at STS College, Stroud, and his presentation title is Making Room for a Drawing Room. Naked Tuesdays, Weird Wednesdays, Ballerinas and Baptisms. So we'll bring up your... that's it, isn't it? And it should... Oh, HDMI on. Should be warming up. There we go. It'll warm up.
Should I?
Yes. Please.
Okay, just before I start, just a little bit of a warning. There are images of animal offal because it's used in a flesh project. Secondly, there are swear words because swear words from a student about a drawing project prompted my PhD. And thirdly, I'd just like to say my daughter made my waistcoat. So I have to say this. And she'd like you to know that we live in Stroud, the hotbed of climate extinction rebellion. And yes, so the Daily Mail says that that's where it all started in Stroud. Okay, so proud of that. So I am the drawing coordinator. I used to be the drawing coordinator for SGS College across all campuses, but now I'm just based at Stroud, and that's enough to handle. I could go and talk about things like Girt by Esther, the beautiful risk of education, and my PhD, but partly one of my rules is to keep 25 teenagers in one room for 5 hours. And keep them off Facebook, right? Keep them at McDonald's, keep them fighting. So I wanted to do away with tables and chairs, sedentary education, and I devised the drawing room. This was built last summer, and the other thing I want to stress is that at Stroud campus we have staff like no other. The guy that built this, his summer job is building the pyramid stage at Glastonbury. The lighting technician used to work for Cats in the West End. Our life model thinks she's been born 96 times and she's a shamanic trainer in Hungary. Okay? The other life model has got 2 PhDs and he can talk to all my students who are maths wizards when he's modelling. And finally, the ballerina is a student that came to us after an injury at the Royal Ballet School. And I saw her walking down the corridor with her friends. The rest of them were all just slovenly down the corridor, and she was walking like this. And I thought, wow, there's something about her. So she now models for us free of charge. And it's revolutionised. To be next to somebody, it's as though you're on the stage, and the students are in awe. It shuts them up, particularly in costume. So this is the drawing room. Built. Why did I build it like that? Well, I wanted to get as many people in as possible. This marks, if you can remember this slide, it looks white, it looks quiet, it looks studious, but the last slide is showing what it's like now, and it ain't like that, okay? This is one of our models. We have frequent ex-students melding in with the present students. This chap here is called Sam Aldebes. He is presently a student at the Intensive Painting and Drawing School in Barcelona. And he would not think of, 5 hours in one pose for 6 weeks. That's what he does, and he's been helping us plan the curriculum. Okay. So prior to having a drawing room, what did we have? We had a room, Studio 3, that we used for drawing. This picture at the top is students sitting around. That was 2014, and this is 2016. So this is my attempt at making some sort of in the round. However, very hard to teach in, because you're forever getting in the way of somebody. It's not as though you're at the back, are you? In that sort of old Victorian way, like there, like a crit. So actually, my sort of sense in there had to be quite light-footed. 2 models. This is life-size life drawing. This is an option offered to those that have specialised in fine art. They were drawn cloth, paper, and that room would be taken apart. Now, very pivotal day in both my teaching and my learning was this day, where we have a life model hidden here, hiding behind offal, animals, and this group of students are from every discipline that I teach. Photography, games design, textiles, 3D photography illustration. And this is, I thought, this is what I want to aim for. I don't want silo learning. I just want a free landscape for people to come and enjoy drawing. And the gentleman there is a chap called John Stadnicki. He's head of photography. And throughout this process, certain staff have really changed. He loves drawing with charcoal now. So that's a plus as well. This is his studio. This is the title of my PhD. I'm 3 years into a 7-year one at Bath Spa. I'm looking at the effectiveness of the drawing curriculum that I invented that was in place from 2011 to 2016. Then it was cut by somebody from sports management. And it was sort of triggered by a comment that I read on Twitter. In those early days of Twitter, when you could follow somebody on Twitter and not be sacked for it, this student said, if I'm asked to draw another fucking set of pliers, I am leaving. So I inherited the drawing programme where the people would just rock in, staff would rock in, pull some pliers out of a drawer, put them on the table and say, draw that all day. Well, the students were headbutting the table. It was just absolute dross, okay? So my boss at the time said, you have it. There's your team, there's 6 people. I'll give you every Thursday for 20 weeks in the year, do something. So we had drawing days. So this is a bit of a feedback from one of them, Nathan, who came here to do illustration. So one of the big days was Flesh Day, where we brought in offal. I can remember the first day we did it, I was carrying half a pig down a corridor, and so Jobsworth was there with a clipboard auditing what was actually happening in that room. And he looked at me and just put his board away and just walked off. And, you know, now we have to do risk assessments about the length of my arm. But so I'm looking back on those days. Right up to date, we have tried to impregnate the DNA of those drawing days into what we call Weird Wednesdays, which is every second Wednesday. They were called Naked Tuesdays by last year's cohort, and this year's called Weird Wednesdays. This was one of the Flesh Days. Now, there was not a scent of death in that room because they were slaughtered the day before. I became very friendly with a local abattoir, believe it or not, who have a license to slaughter llamas for some reason. And he said, I can supply you with everything that would be put in the bin for a hire fee. So we hire the flesh for 5 hours and it goes back to them. Now, I have to say, I've got friends who teach at unis around the country, vegans, who, if they know somebody from Stroud is coming for an interview, they run out the room. They say, I don't want to see another pig's head. Just stop this pig's head. So, but it's still popular, and that project generates the most amount of work out of any project. It always has done, year on year on. So we do it, and they love it. Right. I don't know who else teaches on Foundation here, but when they do their final major project, which is February time, I have found that even the most articulate and intelligent students become utterly constipated by research. They're just blocked up. They don't know what to do with it, right? So this particular girl here, Charlotte Barry, she went on to do textiles at Chelsea. She said, what do I do with this stuff? I've got images. She flew to Washington and New York to research. So what we did was, and I've not done this before, this is a bit like a sort of Gert by Esther risk here taking, I put all the images into a projector and we projected the research on paper cutouts that she'd made. And it fractured the research. And then we realised which designer's work would look fantastic on there. She's not alive anymore. Which architect? Zaha Hadid. As soon as we put her work on there, just blew our minds. And she put all these drawings into a sketchbook for her interview, and it just the bowels of creativity opened up. And this is what she said. Play. There's one word, play. We've had the most fun since we started. What on earth did they do before that day? Honestly. Ridiculous. I spoke about this at an early stage researchers conference in Bath Spa, and there were 2 comments from the audience, one of which was, I think what happened there was an atmospheric attunement. Is anybody familiar with this? I've not heard of it. The place, time, people, task, outcome. So I've subsequently been looking at this. Atmospheric attunement. And the other point was, Dr. Robert Luzar, who is now one of my PhD supervisory team, said, had I heard of Peter Cardia's work at CSM, late 60s? Never heard of it. Anybody familiar with Peter Cardia? He designed the locked room. 3 staff, 1 student, all week. They assisted the student in making work with 1 material. So I've sort of used this now in my teaching. There's quite a lot on the internet. That's him there on the right. He married a student and took her surname. Strange, but it's all right. Central St Martin's, the locked room. That project has just been replicated at Edinburgh, and it involved one of my students. And he said, I said, Otto, can you tell me about how you feel? He said, I can't. I'm still processing it. The college, CSM, were concerned that the students were being brainwashed, but the students asked for it. Yeah. So, this is one of my rather eclectic interests, is modern dance. Has anybody ever heard of Hofesh Shechter? You have now. Israeli choreographer. I went to see this piece because at this time it was performed in Birmingham. I was thinking about redesigning the drawing room. There was something not working about it. I think the learners were being a bit timid. It was almost too academic. So I went to see his performance, and it's grilling. The power of the music and the people, the pathos, the gravitas of the movement, and the auditorium itself is misted. So you're actually part of it. There's no demarcation. So I took that. I'm a great follower of various architects' work. Peter Zumthor. This is a chapel in Germany. Can anybody guess how that interior is made? It's a collection of local tree poles bolted together, covered in concrete and burnt. It's a black charred, I have not been there, black charred interior. I thought, why, if I recreate the opposite, the antidote to a white room, how will that affect the learners? And then could the room become the paper? So that's what I was thinking. Then, so Tacita Dean's work, I thought, why don't the walls and the floors become the paper and the students give the work to the room as opposed to making work in it and taking it away? So, I think this is going to work. This is what it looked like. So they were sacrificing their creativity. It's not there anymore. Somebody described it as some sort of teenager's bedroom covered in chalk. But what I found was they just went with it. It was like lighting a fuse. And they were asking, can we do this? Can we have a paddling pool? Can we? And it just completely, it expanded it to the point that I was literally like the choreographer or the director. And these particular students I call student drivers. And they are often, or nearly always, those not going to art school. I have so many now. I've got lawyers, geography, every other subject, and they come and they don't have the yoke of UCAS to carry around with them. They don't have the yoke of open days. They just say, right, I'm going to do this, and I call it a creative cushion year. It's becoming very popular. This one. So that's what it looked like at its height. I had managers coming in, looking in the door and walking past like that, just think, what the hell is happening in here? However, I had a supporter in our CEO who came down the corridor and said, that's what art school should be like. I was not expecting it. So, and this features one of the models there, and this is Suki modelling clothes, and this session was primarily for textile and fashion. So it was about movement, it was about colour. So I do have staff coming to me and saying, please, Simon, can you supply A1 colour work for fashion textiles? That's what I have to do, or try to. This here on the left is Nicoletta, and if you want to look at her photography online, she's called geniusmuppet.com, right? And she often, is there sound on here? She often narrates her shamanic workings to the students. I mean, they can't understand, but there they are working there. And they adore her. And there's Suki. This was all about movement of fabric. The middle one's not played, but never mind. These are just short films of people actually painting. So you've got people drawing on their laps, but primarily it's sort of big work. So the room itself was often empty, but it actually had that ingrained sense that they'd been living in there, they'd been making. That's what became quite an interesting angle, like, well, it doesn't have to be busy all the time. So this is a atypical session. So you've got music tech coming in, you've got people taking photographs, people drawing, but we started to draw on the models. And these garments were then, I don't know where they were, but and then this is Suki doing some drawing on the floor. Now, I'd never been that close to a performer, particularly with these shapes. It was incredible. This is a rather, I wouldn't necessarily call it cheap and cheerful device, but we've got about 500 tea lights. And this is the model in the top left-hand corner here, and the students actually sort of anoint him with lights. The photography and the drawing from this is gorgeous. And just the other day in a tutorial, I discovered some drawings made post this session, and this is it here. She talks about Bill Viola, because underpinning all the sessions is contextual studies. We don't teach it. They sacked the person, so I have to underpin all the drawing projects. We go and see Bill Viola, we go and see Philip de Barlow, and then we reflect on it. I know it's rather sort of hackneyed and for some people where it's derivative, but this is how we do it, and they remember it. That's drawing, and that's free embroidery. That seems to be the currency going around. There's so many sewing machines going on. There's performance. He painted the suit to that. On the right, that's an image. I teach foundation degree. We don't have a degree course at SGS that I teach on. It's a small group of people. This is foundation degree again. So they own the room. 5 minutes. This is degree course. Games design was mentioned earlier. I teach, well, I don't know what I teach to games design. It started out as drawing, but half of them don't even have GCSE, so some of them wouldn't know how to hold a pencil. So I thought, right, let's get them out of their room and let's make them perform something completely alien to their bodies. Well, they love it. They run down to the room and say, what odd things are we doing today, Simon? So this is a project on the left. This is a student. I gave them one box, one emotion, and, well, 2 hours. That's tiredness. And on the right, that's Richard Serra's verb list being woven, laminated and woven, as in his verb list. So I try to underpin each session. This was a very popular project. There are drawings from it, but this is rather performative.
3, 2, 1.
This games design used this in their work a lot. Now, this is drawing done with music, just talking about the work that's been made. So it's very much about performance, involving other departments. So the drawing room has become a bit of a cauldron, as somebody said. I'll just go for, well, this is a lovely session. Suki was dressed in costume. This was the last week before Christmas, so that's what Christmas feels like. And this started out as a rather strange session. This went on for hours. We didn't stop her. She's... Now, coming to the end. So it wasn't all just performance and chuck away, scrunching up bits of paper. This is something I discovered in a sketchbook. This girl made one of the most beautiful things, a little cloth book. And this was the story of her family. And by the end, you realise she was looking after an invalided mother. And so I just wanted to make sure that you recognise that some of the work is almost like smallly priceless, and some of it's big. This is derived from a fashion house, so I try to sort of think, oh, well, I've seen this, let's do this. It's toilet paper. Now, the drawing room was threatened with closure, not because of this, but because of other staff on either side of it wanting rooms, wanting space to put their students in. My students caught wind of this and did a dirty protest. They locked themselves in with somebody else to photograph it, and these two students, one of which is now at Goldsmiths, and they were just talking about what the room meant to them. And this really sparked off a vitriol and ownership over the room. It was incredible. This is Nicoletta performing a sort of Francis Bacon-esque piece, but the drawings were beautiful. This was documentation by Nicoletta, the photographer, Genius Muppet, about a session in there where she was dressing, well, me, students in Hessian, this sort of biblical scene, because it's now being used by people not hiring it, but wanting to be part of it. There are ex-students, artists. This is our baptism. This is our reenactment of Bill Viola with watering cans. The photography from this was absolutely gorgeous. This is another shamanic piece. This is the photography from it. Comments from some of the people that performed. This is a piece with flour. I've not mentioned project briefs, have I? Paperwork. That was banned. It was to be involved in materials. There's another piece. Room of possibilities down at there. I thought it was a really lovely phrase. During the summer, we had a masterclass from an ex-student who was in Barcelona about, I don't know what it's called, same-size drawing, artists putting their thumbs up. I didn't know what the hell they were doing, and he taught us what that is. So the model is behind the paper, it's the model size on the paper. It was an incredibly hard thing to do. But the staff loved it. Last two slides. This now sums up what it's like in the drawing room. So on the left here, have you ever done this exercise where one person in words is describing what they see and the other person draws it? And you swap roles. It's fascinating. So there's a lot of animation, there's a lot of words in the room. It's filled up. But finally, this last one. So this is what you hear on a Wednesday. So this is Led Zeppelin meets Francis Bacon. So, and they stay in the room. So it's been a long journey, but I think they enjoy it. That's it.